Welcome back to B2B Storytelling Stars presented by Intuit Mailchimp. I'm your host, Jay Akonzo, and today a look inside parts of my one-on-one developing the message of Shez Mehra. Shez is a leading expert in the area of sonic branding. He believes the most powerful way a brand can be remembered is through better experiences and experiential marketing, and the most important ingredient in all of that is sound and music. As he likes to say, when you close your eyes, most of the world's brands disappear. So what makes you remember something the most? Sound. How do brands usually approach sonic branding, their music and sound strategy? Poorly, if at all. So Shez is an evangelist for what he believes in, and we have to find together some kind of way for him to show others why they should care what Shez cares deeply about. That's the challenge many of us face. What you know matters, but what you say and how you say it has to make that clear to others. But Shez is also in a bit of a transitionary period. He's a longtime entrepreneur who left his previous role as a VP of growth at a large agency, and now he's back to operating as a consultant, helping clients with their brand experiences under the brand The 194 Group. 194 has worked with Adidas, Facebook, Four Seasons, Google, Deloitte, and more. Shez is also the partner in another business, which has a full team that he can hand opportunities to. That business is called Raina Music, which is a B2B SaaS company providing streaming music services for hospitality and retail spaces. Shez's plan is to use his personal brand and his years of experience to bring new opportunities to him directly and then redirect them to the right services or service offering behind him. Shez's main challenge is to develop a premise that makes sense for it all, like a coherent circle that he draws around everything he does.
Here's the conundrum I'm in, and it's a problem, but it's kind of a good problem. So my audience and my clients are marketers,
Right.
for the most part. They're either event marketers or brand marketers or digital marketers. They're in the realm of things that flow up to the C-level CMO. Maybe it's the CMO, sometimes it's the brand officer. But within that subsect, I am delivering events and activations through 194 Group. And that business is going quite well.
Okay.
Despite not marketing, despite it having completely been off the radar, we get inbound stuff and reputation-based stuff. I don't have any employees. The margins on these activations are great. I'm booking talent. So that's all happening at 194 Group. And yes, sound and audio and music is part of the core value proposition there to say, we make people feel something.
Yeah.
I'm all about feelings, but in this business, I'm making people feel things to get inspired from a keynote speaker to have an immersive activation. That's what's happening there. At Raina, which is also going quite well, 1 employee on that business, 220 clients, that is the always-on solution of the experiences in these settings. How are we making people feel from an always on? That's the kind of SaaS version. Kind of a good problem, but I need to figure out how I navigate it. And that's where I'm at right now.
When we think about the work that we're doing together, are we thinking about your own personal brand as it encompasses your businesses, or are we thinking about one of those businesses, right? So that's like something that we need to decide on.
I think it's the personal brand because
like I've had a lot of success doing it that way. Yeah, like this is where I think marketing is going. I think brands that hide behind logos publicly are in trouble. I think
the deal flow comes through me, and then I discern which of the businesses to kind of push that conversation to service. Yeah. And the great thing is at each of these businesses, dude, like there's people and teams, so it's not me doing everything.
Right. And so like one way to pull that forward really quickly is you start ringing the bell for X, Y, or Z premise and all the IP, the stories, the terminology that you define for people and illuminate. You show up as a substantive teacher and sort of like a pusher of the industry forward. And then people can see clearly behind that, oh, and that's why Shez has this business which does this and this business which does this. Or, hey, Shez, I really love what you're saying. How do I work with you? Okay, well, let's assess your needs, for example, and I have multiple things on offer. Like, I don't see an issue doing it that way. I think the other thing I wanted to bring up quickly was if it's experiences, what you hit on is so personal to what I've been through. I sort of came up through content marketing And when I exited my last corporate job, I knew I didn't want to be known for like content marketing or anything really therein. I wanted to serve creative entrepreneurs, creators. Unlike you, I wasn't looking to speak to corporates, but I struggled because you sell to the people who are nearby that have money, and so a lot of my clients initially were brands, B2B companies in particular. Now I'm still in B2B, but they're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're soloists. And I find that like the corporates are now sponsors, right? So it's like, okay, I have a portfolio of like demographics to worry about. Then I have like this existential debate going on at all times. Like my existential debate has been, am I the podcast guy? Am I the showrunner more broadly than narrowly in audio? Like, okay, I really love making shows, and the shows have premises and formats and talent, and I know how to construct this, and I have teaching models, and I've done it before. Like, I have a lot I could add there. But I don't want to be the podcast guy. Okay, am I the storytelling, like B2B storytelling guy? Well, that's interesting, but like, I don't know. There's a million people talking about story and all these things. And what I realize now is like, it wasn't about picking one thing or another. It was about the order in which people needed to hear from me, the stuff that I love or can do well. And so taking all those things and sequencing them better was what I needed to do. So like, what I really want to talk about is not necessarily what my buyer is arriving needing. I have to talk to them in terms that they're thinking about, go out and meet them where they're at. And then if they agree to spend some time with me, I can show them why it's more than just podcasting, or it's more than just storytelling, not just I'm diminishing those things. So to sequence those things, people arrive thinking about the singular word differentiation. Maybe storytelling afterwards, but as a means to stand out, as a means to grow audience. So like, I'm not going to be known as the guy that helps a brand or an individual differentiate. There's so many people and organizations that specialize in that. But maybe I have a way to articulate my like assertion or vision for how to differentiate, and that's different than everything else. And now I can start talking about storytelling and why a show matters, or why a premise matters, and a show is a great vehicle to carry that premise to market. Now I can talk about resonance. Think of it as not competing priorities and you got to pick, but as discovered value versus apparent value. And so discovered value is all the stuff that if I spent meaningful time with you, I would get about you, but it requires time to discover it. Apparent value is like the thing you want to lead with so that it's readily apparent why anybody would care. And now that they've stopped the scroll, now that they've opted in to whatever, join you on a sales call or listen to you on a podcast, now that they've said, I will now spend time with you, you can unpack what you're for. So like, simple way of framing this is like, what do you say in the headline versus what's in the paragraphs? What do you say on the homepage versus, maybe below the fold on the homepage or a specific offer page? So I think what we're looking for is, what's the category you're in? Experiences, undoubtedly. What do you have to say about experiences that is unique and maybe not directly tied to audio, but that it leads people to go, I want to spend more time with you. And you're like, cool, you don't know this, but I'm about to convince you why sonic branding matters almost more than anything within experiences, right? But that's the discovered value.
So yeah, you saying I focus on differentiation is like me saying I focus on experiences.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of sure, buddy. Like everyone says.
Yeah,
that.
like get in line.
Now,
right?
how
get
do you
in line
back
with your
that up?
peers. You as the figurehead, as the thought leader, as the trusted voice and expert in the public eye, almost playing air traffic control behind the scenes to direct, audience and prospects and clients to the right offer, all those things. There's almost like two filters. If you're out there as like the tip of the spear almost, there's a filter that happens that you don't control and almost don't want to address, especially when you're not trying to just blanket the world in your logo and do broad awareness campaigns. So there's a first filter that brings people into the market, which is, I am thinking about experiences of some kind. Maybe a narrow thing like I'm running an event, maybe more broadly like I'm bullish on the idea of experiences, right? That brings people, that puts them in your market. The first filter happens before you know who they are, and maybe they don't even know who you are, which is, I'm thinking of experiences. So in my world, it's, I do have the desire to differentiate my business or something within it. If you don't, you won't discover me and probably won't care about me, right? But I'm not here to convince you to be different. Now, maybe down the road, if I start hiring a staff or something someday, I don't think I want to, but I start thinking about justifying why differentiation matters. But that's way too far from like my home base to go that far out and meet someone and go, this is why you should be different. So the first filter for me is they are thinking about, I really want to stand out, differentiate, and whatever small or narrow thing they're thinking of. So I think for you, it's like, I'm thinking about experiences. So that brings people into our markets. Now the next filter is the one we're trying to construct, I think, which is, what is the one that is your leading belief, your angle on, your assertion about, the shorthand I use is premise, the world of developing brand experiences. So for example, you might then put up another filter, which is a useful form of friction, right? Repels the wrong people, but speeds up the buyer's journey for the right people, where you're like, it's the reason we believe in experiences as marketers, the reason we need them more, et cetera, is it's not about direct response transacting people. It's about brand recall. And so the second filter is, if you don't believe in brand recall, or I haven't convinced you, peace out, or spend more time with my content to understand it. Don't take up my valuable time on a call.
Putting experiences here, that is vernacular that all levels of marketers understand, because whether they're buying or shipping media, making a spot as a head of production, the CMO in charge of like significant P&L, they all need to, they're doing all of these things with the goal and hope and aspiration of this output,
right?
Compelling whoever they're trying to get it in front of to feel something.
Yes.
Right? Because once they feel something, therein is where hopefully they either take an action or remember the thing or feel a certain way about the product or service. Like everything we're trying to do as marketers is in the business of engineering feelings, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
Feelings are derived from the experiences we live, whether consciously or subconsciously as we go about our day. And that is kind of the space that I'm in. And then to your point, okay, great. A lot of people feel that way. What are you saying to support that in a differentiated way?
Yeah.
I am saying, look, if you really want to like tap into making people feel stuff and all of these experiences, your events, your this, that, everything you're doing, sound is a superpower.
As we start to get clarity on what Shez is asserting, in other words, what his premise might be, we turn to a doc where we could write out his empathy statement, the 4 beats of a story about your brand or about somebody else that contains and delivers your premise. It's a story written to resonate. So if someone asked you, why should I care about you? You might respond with these 4 beats. Remember, you're answering in this order. First, align with your audience. They have to know that you have their best interest in mind in order to care about what comes next out of your mouth or from your words. Then once you're aligned with people, you have to bring out the tension of your story. You have to acknowledge and maybe describe the problems or the barriers that they experience. So from align to agitate, and then finally you make your assertion. You have to assert where you're taking them as a solution. You've spoken to the illness as you agitated it before. So what's the cure? What's your vision as a leader that you're bringing us towards with the work that you do? What are you asserting? Now, the 4th piece of an empathy statement we touch on very little today, but it's where we often get stuck. And maybe you picked up on Shez anchoring to that a little bit too much. The 4th piece of an empathy statement is invite, maybe to a project or your overall brand. That's what we're so eager to do as marketers, is to invite the audience to something on offer from us, but we can't leap there. We like to, but that's why our message doesn't resonate. We first have to align, agitate, and then assert our premise in order for people to feel the urge to act, and then we can invite them to do so. All right, let's get back to my chat with Shez and our drafting of that framework.
I suppose part of the proclamation is like, everyone says they care about experiences. No one is thinking about sound and how important that is to the experience, whether you're shipping a spot on TV, whether you're designing a UX UI product experience for your app, or whether you go to a physical event, pop-up, product launch. All of those different experiences, brand experiences, human experiences across touch points, across channels and platforms. What my stake in the ground is that sound can not only amplify all of those experiences, but actually here's how that cuts through for salience and affinity and recall and blah, 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 blah.
I'm putting that under assert. because that's where you get
Sure.
to the point of leveling your opinion or your perspective, what you see as truth, right? The first alignment is just like, hey, this is who you are and what you go through, right? You're just gut checking that like we're on the same page. Because again, that's you're in my market is kind of what you're adding here, right? So like you're a brand leader and you believe in the power of experiences, and then like how you typically think about or execute experiences goes here, and it's just like 1, 2, 3, and that's it. It's and you're gonna be able to do this fluently because you see what they go through, right? It's like, all right, you're trying to create something incredibly I don't know, visceral, maybe viral. You're thinking about getting people in a room with a type of event. You're doing this, that, the other thing. So when you think experiences, you're thinking about this, right? And then what you're going to say is like, well, here's the problem that you face. So that's like, so this is the first. I'm going to highlight this because I think we're cooking something special here. So like down here, now the problem. Or problem.
Okay, so like people are inundated and overwhelmed with the visual stimuli.
Yeah.
They're drowning it out. You're trying to connect with people through serving them visual creative. They're busy driving their kids around. They don't even really get to connect with that visual creative. Or if you're serving a TV spot, they're on their second screen on TikTok or IG or LinkedIn on their phone. Like what are you doing? Or how can you actually, get people to pay attention to what you are like the sausage from the sausage factory. You guys are doing all these things and shipping these spots, and then like it's going sight unseen, right? That's kind of an extreme thing I'm saying, but on that notion, on that kind of in that realm is like you guys are doing all of this stuff, pouring all of this money into all of these channels and platforms to hopefully get people to compel them to feel something, to do something, take some kind of action. And by ignoring sound and how sound plays into that journey, you're doing yourselves a huge disservice. Here's why.
This is great. We've identified a problem. The problem is you cut to the quick because you're an expert, because you see it, because you have the burden of knowledge. They're not there yet. So you have to go through the excruciating process in this doc of like staying in their world before you make it inescapable that sound it matters. So like what I'm looking for here is, I'll give you a quick example. I'm looking for if you're thinking about an experience, you do it this way. That's the previous section, the status quo. But the problems with doing this way, it's not the lack of sound. It's stuff they already experience as like, this isn't going so well. So like one is people are inundated and overwhelmed with visual stimuli. They're tuning it out. The other might be like, I don't know, the cohesion of your experiences is lacking. It's too full of too many variables, like putting on an event or doing this campaign or doing that spot or whatever. It just kind of creates like execution chaos, so it doesn't hold together. And when an experience doesn't hold together, people don't really remember it or care, right? So that's what you're looking for. You're like, the typical way we go about this looks like this, and the typical problems it leads to looks like this. And now people ask, well, what else can I do? And now in the assertion, you're like, we have to remember why we're doing this. We're not doing this to get eyeballs. We're doing this to win hearts. We're doing this to be remembered. And we're not leveraging the number one thing that causes people to remember, which is not visual. It's sound, right?
Yeah.
So later you get there and they go, oh, I see it now.
Without a music strategy in place or a sonic strategy in place, things continue to fall short. You're spending more time. People are just like, whatever, we can kind of agitate. But that's something I've heard over and over and over again. Like without them knowing about or being educated on sonic branding or sonic identity and all of the technicalities on what sound and music can do for the human brain and body, all of that aside, they're just telling me like, this is a pain for us because we like music is a pain. It's complicated. Like it's subjective. We don't have a strategy as to what sound or music means for our brand.
So, all right, so let's just step out of it and kind of retrace the steps here. So you're a brand leader and you believe in the power of experiences. And here's how you typically think about or execute those experiences. You're thinking about events and advertising and all these other things. There's all the departments that you need to now align and get on board and tap for resources, not to mention all the agencies you probably work with, or partners or freelancers or contractors. There's brand assets to create, and you have to keep everyone aligned, not just in terms of deadline, but of course the purpose and the goal, how you'll measure the success and all those brand assets. You have deadlines to hit. Then you have all this like waiting that you do of like, we're investing all this time and energy and people resources into this. And like after so much work, the event or the experience or the campaign finally launches, and like, will it work? It's like a really stressful thing to endure. Align. Then the problems with all these experiences that you're thinking about creating is like, first of all, people on the receiving end, they're already inundated and overwhelmed by visual stimuli. So they end up tuning it out, and that's the last thing you want. So you're stepping into a backdrop that's already pretty daunting and working against your cause. Making matters worse, there's probably a lack of cohesion around the experience because you've done your best, but there's so many variables to execute. So as the chaos of creating it starts to take hold, it actually worsens the end experience. And all they want is one end experience, but you have all these things that go into creating one cohesive experience. So there's no consistency, which just sets you up for possible failure. You have to operate as one and create one experience in the end of it all. And so although you're embracing experiences, although you believe in experiences, they're not necessarily having the impact that you want. The underlying problem to all of that is they are not consciously and proactively constructed to do what an experience is meant to do, which is to be memorable. That is the actual one true aim of an experience, which is to be memorable. And you could rattle off a million reasons as to why, right? Like,
Yeah.
so the issue is in all the effort and all the difficulty and all the stress and the striving to create amazing brand experiences, we've lost sight of what experiences are for, being memorable. They're not brand experiences after all, they're human experiences where when humans share stories, when humans reflect and look back, when humans make choices and pick their favorites, it's experiences they remember and drives those actions. But they have to remember it first. They have to feel something, then recall it. In other words, these experiences are for brand recall, most especially, and we've stopped focusing on the recall and what makes people recall it. We're so focused on being visible with these things, we've stopped being memorable, right? And so now you can shift gears to be like, and we're so stuck on this that almost nobody is thinking about the single most important things that makes these experiences emotional and memorable and powerful, which is sound. Sound makes you more consistent. Here's why. Sound makes you feel a certain way. Here's why. Sound drives memory. Here's why. Now you shift to the invite and it's easy, right?
Yeah, man.
I'm Shez, or we're this organization, and we believe in the power of experiences, but it has to be focused on this. And, that's the easy part.
Crushed it, man. You got it. Jay.
Awesome. So you got it.
You should just
because
be my
all I'm
business
doing is
partner,
all I'm doing is taking the stuff you're putting down in raw fashion
know.
and picking
know.
out the best ingredients and putting them in a sequence. That's it.
As you were saying that, I just couldn't help about thinking about the cottage trip we just went on.
Yeah.
And what is our goal as parents? Do you think the kids had a good time? Will they remember our trip? We do all this to make their experience memorable. Why are marketers not treating their brands like the experience we're trying to give our kids?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's great. I would keep a log of story threads, and that's one.
Cool.
And when you develop it, when you write it or speak it, however you like to develop ideas, you need to then think about this premise and go, so I'm going to take that trip and I'm going to describe it and exaggerate it according to the beats of my premise. So you're like, listen, this reminds me of like, I went to a cottage with my family. We do it every year. It's amazing. So, okay, now align. All right. So like, just like, any of us marketers, like I was just so obsessed with making this a good experience for my kids, right? Like that's what we do.
Yeah.
And like, so here's what goes into all
Follow
that.
the framework. Yeah.
Right. And then you start doing your parenting version of whatever the marketer goes through. It's like, so first we have to like book all the things. And then we have like experiences that we're trying to like get stuff like in the car and like food and blah, 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 and prepare. And then we're there and there's stuff to do and we're unpacking and all that. Like we're having not a great time making this experience great for our kids, right? As parents, like I'm in the car, I'm sweaty because I was packing the car. I know when I arrive, I'm going to get sweaty again unpacking the car, all these things, right? It's like, this is so similar to what we go through as marketers, isn't it? All right. Well, here's the problem is like, I'm losing sight in the execution of this experience of what the hell this experience was actually for, which is like making this super memorable. And I remember, looking back on this trip, you know what I remember? I remember the sound of my kids' laughter when this happened. I remember playing this one song. I remember, and this happens in my family, truly, my daughter loves to sing. And I remember like adjusting my mirror so I could like watch this private concert unbeknownst to her as she mouthed or actually sung the words to Taylor Swift or whatever, right? That's what I'm going to remember. You know what I'm not going to remember? You know what my kids aren't going to remember? You know what I have to make sure doesn't get in the way of making this memorable? Is all the logistical that I have to do to get there, right? You know, it's actually the audio experience. When I remember that, I'm feeling something, but what I'm actually recalling is sound, is their voice, is the music, is the birds, is the whatever, you know?
Waves,
and like we can't lose sight of that, you know? So everything, my actions should have remembered that to begin. I should have framed everything accordingly. Right? So that's like a clunky execution of like what you would.
No, I see what you're doing
story.
though. It's brilliant. Yeah.
And all I'm doing is retracing the beats, align, agitate, assert, maybe have an invitation. You know, the invitation could be to the brand, but in a personal story like that, it's much more about, I'm going to invite you to now consider this insight or possibility.
Yes, it's a self-serving question answer in there.
Yeah, exactly. Shez had several breakthroughs during this call, but the most important piece of all of it was the shift that a lot of experts and marketers are having to make right now. Being an expert does matter, but expertise has become commodified on the internet. It's table stakes, foundational, but found everywhere. So why would they pick you? What you know does matter, but what you say and how it makes them feel both combine to determine whether or not others care. You see the value in your ideas. You see the value in your message, in your content, in your products and your services. How do you show up to show others what you already see? This all begins with nailing your premise, but then you have to actually use that language of your premise to inform your work out in the world. Shez walked away from our call with a draft of his premise, but it can't stop there for him or for you. We have to use all of that language to tell our stories, to update our messaging and improve it so we're differentiated, to inform our content and everywhere we show up as individuals, as experts, as marketers, and as leaders. And to help you do all of this, I've created a template mapping the structure of an inspiring blog post or a newsletter or an essay, something that you can plant as a flag for your ideas and your perspective to rally others to your cause. I call this template the stake in the ground post. What are you planting a flag for? Here's how to write it. Here's how to update from your premise to a piece of content that can help you get that crucial rep to improve the way you explain it, because writing is thinking. We have to write to clarify our ideas even further and to gather some crucial initial data from your audience. Do you get a small number of people reacting in big ways? That's what we're hunting for with our ideas. That's not final success, but it's signal that we're on the right path. A small number reacting in big ways. That's a sign that your message is resonating. So you can find that template alongside this video and get the rest of our videos and templates in this series at jayakonzo.com/stars. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Intuit Mailchimp, for supporting this series. And thanks for doing work that matters. We're in B2B, our work really does matter. That's the point of this series, is to both convey that and empower us to deepen the resonance that others feel when they encounter our words. So keep making work that matters, because when you matter more, you need to hustle for their attention less. I'm Jay Akunzo. I'll see you next time.